Thank you for joining us in the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics once again. And we've got Cris Collinsworth, part 2. And we talk schedule with Cris Collinsworth. Of course, Sunday Night Football. The Bengals have one. They go to New York and play the Giants on Sunday Night Football. They've got 5 nationally televised games, though, a couple of games at 4:25. We talk about the Bengals schedule, how fair it is, and everything you need to know, basically, about what the Bengals will face on a week-to-week basis in the 2024 season. Courtesy, Cris Collinsworth. All right, you made a very, very wise decision. You joined us in the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics. So join us for Cris Collinsworth, part 2. We're talking about the legendary player, the legendary broadcaster, and to boot, which I appreciate, and I know a lot of you do too, husband, father, grandfather. I don't know, Cris. I don't know how 24 hours in a day is enough for you, my man. It's like, what the heck? Everybody thinks they have busy schedules. I'm telling you, if you want to know what a busy schedule is, talk to this man, Cris Collinsworth.
It's all good. But the good news is both my daughters are pregnant, so grandbabies 4 and 5 coming up. So that's the good
Sweet.
stuff.
That's awesome, man. Real quick, is there anything better than being a grandfather? I got 4 grandkids myself. I'm telling you what, man, there is nothing in the world better than being a grandfather.
It's cool because you only hang around long enough for your energy to remain high enough that they think you're fun and cool every time you come over.
No question.
And then you leave and you immediately go home and go to bed because you got nothing left. That's it. That's all I got.
No overtime, man. Just 4 quarters. That's it. 4 quarters. All right. So in this little edition, time spent with the man, Cris Collinsworth, we're going to talk about schedules. And I guess real quick, are you excited about your Sunday night package? You guys get some pretty good matchups, and you have the Bengals. Let me see where the Bengals fall in this one.
Don't even start with me. The idea that we're going the whole year without a Bengals home game is still making me insane.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's on the road. You're right.
I'm like
against Washington on the road. That's Monday night. Sunday night it's the Giants. Yeah,
we got one in New York. That's it.
Man, a Shevitz. Unbelievable. Well, I mean, that'll be an interesting matchup. But talking about the Bengals schedule, as we know, a problem they've had, Cris, is getting off to tough starts. It's like having a losing record after the first month. And maybe in there's a division loss or two, So not only are you behind the 8 ball, man, the tiebreaker within the division, you're behind the 8 ball. This schedule, they open up, they got New England at home, Kansas City on the road. That's a beast. That's a 4:25 kick on the road. Washington at home, Carolina on the road. So home, away. 3 out of the first 4 games are against teams with new head coaches. And they've got young quarterbacks, a couple of them. I'm not saying they're going to start, these rookie quarterbacks, but one of them might. So, it takes a little while for a new head coach to get his system indoctrinated and all that. The Bengals have 3 times. The only game that they won't be facing a new head coach and staff and all that is Kansas City away, and we know that's going to be tough. That's crazy, isn't it? 3 new head coaches in their first 4 games.
It's crazy, but it also right now you've got to win. They've got to win 3 of the first 4. I mean, you go in and knock off Kansas City in Kansas City, which is personally when I would rather play Kansas City early in the year. That team gets better, as all teams do, but that's definitely a team that gets better as they go along. But I mean, you've got to beat Drake May and the Patriots in the opener. I mean, you've got to win that game. Kansas City, we talked about. Washington with Jaden Daniels, you got to win that game. You new head coach, You got to win the game, and then you play Carolina. I mean, they've got to be 3-1 coming out of the first, at least 3-1. If not, they don't knock off Kansas City. So even more emphasis, I think, on Joe Burrow, the wrist. Exactly, what all the new season entails. But that opening month, September's a got to have it for the Bengals, no question.
Couldn't agree more. And the first division game isn't until October 6th, week 6, and it's home against Baltimore. So that's a plus. And then the very next game is the New York Giants, Sunday Night Football, 8:20 kick out there in New York. The thing that I think this schedule is very fair, because the Bengals don't have 3 straight away games, no more than 2 straight away. They don't have 3 straight home either, but I mean, it's like home, away, back-to-back away, back-to-back home. They were very fair in that regard. And the only area where, you think, boy, this is going to be a tough travel scenario. They go to the West Coast to play the Chargers in November 17th. But they have a Thursday night game against Baltimore on the road on Prime on the 7th. And then they have the mini bye and travel to the Chargers. And then after the Chargers game, they have their bye week. So, I mean, boy, they get a mini bye before they have to take that trip. They get the bye week after that trip. And the bye week is in like week 12. That's, I think, the second latest in franchise history. So I think overall, the NFL was very, very fair to the Bengals. I mean, Pittsburgh, they're talking 6 division games in their last 8 weeks, Chris. What? I mean, Tom is saying, what did I do to the league? What's going on here? I think this is extremely fair, the schedule.
It's as good as it can be. And remember, the Bengals really benefit from finishing last in their division. So they get other bottom tier teams. I mean, you hate to put it that way, but it really has helped them. I mean, they get Charlotte. They're getting the teams. I'm trying to think who the variable teams would be on down that list. But, even Nashville is not overwhelming. If you're going to play the Cowboys, play them in Texas Stadium. Why not? I mean, the tough games, you can be anywhere. But, the kicker is playing the East, obviously the NFC East. So you get Philadelphia, you get Dallas in the mix with that. But you also get the Giants and Washington. So, that it's a very good division on the top end, arguably maybe 2 of the best teams in the NFC this year, but not teams that the Bengals, if they're right, if they come out of the box. I mean, I just think that if you go to Baltimore on October 6th, 3-1, and then you come back, no matter what happens there, you go in and play the New York Giants the next week. They're 3-1 there. The Bengals are going to just be a factor throughout the course of the game season, because who is it that you just go, oh, they have no chance? Right. You got all the division games, of course, but the Giants, and then you got the Eagles, and then you got the Raiders. You go down to Chargers, they can beat them. Tennessee, it's Denver, that's the benefit. So in my mind, I thought the Bengals were going to win the Super Bowl last year. I'll tell you straight up. I of course had no idea Joe was going to get hurt.
Sure.
But I thought that was the last year they were going to have that core group of receivers together, and before somebody had to go away. And I was afraid 2 of them were going to have to go away. And I didn't know what would happen with the offensive line, but so it didn't happen. For whatever reason, it didn't happen. And then I got back and I looked at this schedule and I go, man, you go put anybody else's schedule you want to, even within this division, up on the screen, and you're going to see the Bengals have the best schedule. I mean, they have a real opportunity if they just get back to their level of play that we've seen since Joe Burrow's been here. And there's no reason they don't either win the division or at the very least make the playoffs and have a chance to have a real run.
5 nationally primetime games, 2 on Thursday night. First time in franchise history, 2 Thursday night games. Joe Burrow is undefeated on Thursday night, 2-0. He's undefeated at Paycor, 5-0, under the lights. So, they've got 2 home games of the 5 on primetime are at home. And the interesting thing, too, is, they've got 2 4-25 starts, Kansas City, as we talked about, and Philadelphia at home. I'm glad Philadelphia's at home. That's the best home game on the schedule in my mind. The Eagles coming to Cincinnati. That's a hell of a football team. Well, we talked about the 3 new head coaches the first 4 weeks. They got 5 new head coaches they're going to be facing: New England, Washington, Carolina, the LA Chargers, Tennessee. Of course, Brian Callahan, intimately familiar with.
That's going to be great, isn't it? To get Brian back in here. Every time an offensive coordinator leaves, now the debate starts, like who was more important, right? And then but I'm really happy for Brian. Brian was a great first lieutenant. He just was, He was a guy that understood his role. He didn't stick his chest out. He didn't, say, hey, what about me? That sometimes can disrupt. And now he's got a shot, and they're rebuilding a little bit in Tennessee. But I think that he and Bill are going to do really well down there. They're at their core. I'm sure going to be, Dad wants to run the ball behind the offensive line the whole time that he's there. And the son has this little back skill set, really, of what's going on in the passing game. So I'm anxious to watch Tennessee. I think that it may not happen this first year, but I think you're going to see an uptick down there too.
I agree. 100,000%. The Callahan father-son, that's going to be just a blast to watch. I agree with you. How much air miles? The Bengals have the second fewest air miles schedule-wise in the league, Chris. Washington's the only team that has fewer, and they only have fewer by less 250, 300 miles. So I bet the Bengals, they have 611 air miles. The Chargers, for example, 26,803. It's like night and day. As we know, where we're located here, it's not a ridiculous flight anywhere. How big a deal is that as the season wears on? Do you believe that that's a factor?
Well, I don't think they have an international game this year, right? That's
Do not.
So that helps because now you get to throw your bye week. I think you were saying, before or after the trip to Los Angeles. So,
right.
And I think that don't want to give away all our secrets, but you fly home after the game, and of course they're not serving you drinks or anything on the airplane, the team. But every once in a while there'd be some little side slot in your bag that you could put something in, but you fly back, you're completely dehydrated. You have a little cocktail or two on the way home. And if you have 4 or 5 instead, and you're completely dehydrated, you hear that scream from the back of the airplane, somebody cramping up like, and everybody running and laughing at them. And, it's part of it. But you add 3 or 4 of those cross-country trips, and probably the bigger issue is what happens to the coaching staff.
Yeah.
So the coaching staff, if you go west to east, whatever, and you've got a 5-hour flight and you get home and you've got a Sunday night game. So you're already behind the schedule. Now you got a Sunday night game and you don't get on the airplane till 3 a.m. And then you get all the way home at, 8 a.m. or whatever. Now your coaching staff has to try and go put together a game plan when they're completely out of their minds. They haven't even watched the game film of the game they just played to gain any edge over that. And you got to put together this thing on 17 cups of coffee, just trying to stay awake. So it is I think, as hard as it is on the players, it's much tougher on the coaching staff trying to prepare for the following week's opponents if you're not getting home until, crack it on.
No question. Let me get you out of here on this one, Stud. How difficult a job is it to make an NFL schedule? Everybody, wants to have some national coverage. The networks want the best teams. How do you juggle all that kind of deal? And how long does it take, do you think, to determine an NFL schedule for 32 teams.
They've got it going on. Hans is taking over, and he's trying to do the best that he can with this whole thing. But probably you start with what the teams don't want, but then you got to go through what the networks don't want. I mean, they've paid billions of dollars for the rights to broadcast these games. Yeah. And as soon as we get our schedule, you go, okay, there's the 5 good ones, and then what are we going to do with these other ones sometimes, So it used to be that we got our choice of the best teams, whoever that was. And I'm just going to say the Dallas Cowboys because that's the number 1 draw in all of football. It always seems to have been. We could get them 5 times. Now I think we're down to we can get a couple of teams 3 times maybe, and everybody else, So what's interesting for me is I see much more of the league than I used to in the past. But so getting ready for all those other teams, and it's great to see Cleveland, and it's great to see, New Orleans or whatever, but they're not the national draws that the Cowboys and the Eagles and some of these teams are. But in fairness, who would have ever, we've got Houston on our schedule 2 or 3 times this year. And who would have ever believed that at the beginning of last year? So what you see out of the NFL is that I think is unlike other sports. You can make a case that teams that finished last a year ago could win the Super Bowl this year. And that's what makes, in my mind, it the best of the leagues, better than baseball, better than basketball, hockey, or whatever, is that you do get those stories every single year, somebody coming off the deck.
No doubt about it. It's there's nothing better than the National Football League, and the numbers show it. I mean, the NFL draft and the schedule release got bigger numbers than NBA playoff and NHL playoff games.
I know.
The NFL is a 500-pound gorilla. It's a monster, man. It really is.
And they know it. And they know it. But it's something we all have in common in this country. I've sat down at tables with politicians and actors and all different, and everybody, it always starts with the NFL. Like everybody has a favorite team. Everybody has. So, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm sitting here with somebody who's making the laws that are changing our country, and somebody who's made this movie that I absolutely adore. And it's the greatest thing. And I'm going to be talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, what are we doing here? There's something wrong. But it's amazing that it's so necessary almost in this country. It is a common bond in a time when we don't have many common bonds, it seems like. Well,
I'm going to be waiting for the documentary on Cris Collinsworth's life, because you have had one hell of a life, sir. There are no 2 ways about that.
Well, we'll see which 3 people come to that one, but
you're the best. Appreciate you carving time, because I know there is no busier man on planet Earth than my man CC.
I always got your back, brother. Always will.
You're the best. Thanks for everything.
See you, Dave.
Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realize self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.